Hey, I'm Kai, and today I want to see if I can get my Valeton GP-5 to sound as good as the Fractal FM3. I reviewed the Valeton GP-5 recently, and I really loved what it had to offer for the price, and the Fractal FM3 is my favourite modeler I've ever tried. It only made sense to me to shoot them out against each other and see how well the GP-5 fares. Now right off the bat, there are a few logistical reasons why you may pick the GP-5 over the FM3. It's lighter, it's more portable, and it's cheaper. This would tee it up to be a perfect backup rig for the FM3 if it sounds good. One of the coolest features about the GP-5 that I really enjoy is that it's actually able to be powered by your phone. You just hook it up with a USB-C cable and it powers the device, and it also functions as an audio interface at the same time. Unlike the Fractal FM3, the Valeton GP-5 is able to load NAM amp captures. This means that you can go and download pretty much any amp you can think of from the web. There are a bunch of reasons why you might find yourself picking the GP-5 over the FM3, so let's see how well it holds up tonally. What I've done for this video is I've run a bunch of NAM amp captures of the amps in the FM3. I've then imported those amp capture files into the GP-5 and done a little bit of tweaking to get them just a little bit closer. I'm going to be matching a mixture of factory presets and my presets that I've made for previous videos. The first tone is going to be one of my favourite factory presets. This is Bassman About to Explode. This is of course based on the Fender Bassman, and the cabinet for this one is the 4x10 Bass Guy Dynacab. I'll start each of these clips with the Fractal FM3 for reference, then I'll go through the GP-5 and then we'll hear them back to back. We'll hear the Bassman on the FM3 first, and one thing I want you to pay particular attention to here is the picking dynamics. The Fractal is super responsive, and that's not an easy thing to get right in the digital realm. Let's hear what this same amp is like once it's been run through a NAM capture and loaded up on the GP-5. In my opinion, it's not quite there for me, even with some additional tweaking and processing. It just doesn't have the same level of depth to me. It sort of feels like you've taken the absolute highest point of the dynamics and frozen the amp there. We'll hear these back to back just for a better reference, and I'm running out to the Layla P-split so I can play the same performance through both modelers at the same time. The GP-5 sounds a little bit duller and a little bit deader, but it is definitely in the same ballpark. I would say that it's workable. For instance, if you were using this as a backup rig for the FM3, you could probably get by just fine using the GP-5. Also, considering the price of the GP-5, getting even this close is a major accomplishment. Next up is going to be a similar Fender-y kind of vibe, but dialed back quite a way. This is actually an ambient clean preset I made for a video very recently where I was shooting out the Fractal FM3 against the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. I'll leave a link to that one in the description box down below if you would like to check that out. The amp here is the Band Commander, and the cabinet here is going to be the 1x12 Deluxe. Again, we'll hear what this is like on the Fractal first. Now let's hear where I've got it dialed in for the GP-5, and I probably should have mentioned previously, but I've tried dialing in all of the effects to match where possible. I will say one area where this became a little bit complicated is that the GP-5 just doesn't have the same breadth of effects needed to make this sort of tone happen. I wouldn't say they're worlds apart by any means though, and I do genuinely think this tone on the GP-5 sounds pretty great. The wet effects in the GP-5 are actually really nice, and I'd say they're way beyond what you would expect to get for the price. I'll do another clip of these two in a quicker sort of back-to-back kind of setting. One of the things that stands out to me here is that the fractal effects being in parallel mean that you get a much better separation between the delay and the reverb, while the GP-5 can get a little bit muddy sounding. As far as the raw amp tone goes though here, I would say that the GP-5 is a little bit narrower sounding, but still is not too bad at all. Overall, I would say that on a cleaner tone like this, the amp captures do get quite a lot closer than we had with the Bassman in the previous clip. Next up is a preset I dialed in for the Jupiter Effects Warlow demo. This is a pushed Hiwatt sounding thing. I kind of forgot that the impulse responses reset on the latest FM3 firmware, so this is actually running through an impulse response of an AC30. This is by ML Soundlab. It wouldn't be my first choice of cabinet at all, but it actually sounded really good like this, so I didn't feel like the need to change it. Again, we'll hear this one in the Fractal first, and this tone works really well for some smooth, dynamic neck pickup stuff. This jumped Hiwatt sound is one of my absolute favourite amps in the Fractal, so let's hear what it sounds like once we've NAM captured it and then imported it into the GP-5. I do quite like this one, but it sounds like it's smoothed out on the GP-5 a little bit more than I would like. It also has some weird high-end fizzy noises, almost like it's missing some information and then trying to fill that back out again. This is a very bass-heavy tone to begin with though, so I'm not surprised to see that it's struggling a little bit to keep up with the high end on this. It's still a great tone in its own right, but let's hear these two back to back to see just how close it got. One of the big things I notice here is the dynamics. The Fractal seems to back off really nicely here, while the GP5 stays pretty distorted. I'll play something super soft and you'll hear that a lot more. The next tone is one that I almost forgot to include, and that is a classic Plexi crunch thing. This is the Fractal 1959 Plexi model running into ML Sound Lab's Mega Green impulse response. Now let's hear this one through the GP5. There is a small amount of reverb on here just to keep things nice and fresh sounding. Now this is actually one of my favourite tones to have come out of the GP5 so far. I would say that it's pretty close and I'm actually really enjoying what it's doing. I may even go as far as to say I would be perfectly happy to be set up with either of these two tones. Let's hear just how close they are though in a proper back-to-back clip. Other than some minor dynamics things yet again, I would say that the GP5 is really holding up nicely here. This sort of shows just how powerful the GP5 can be. With the right capture, it can sound amazing. Onto some higher gain now though. This is the 5153 50-watt model in the Fractal FM3. This was another one I dialed in for the quad cortex comparison video. It's chunky, it's articulate, and it's super aggressive. Now we'll hear how it sounds on the GP5. I found that the accuracy of the GP5 does start to suffer a little bit when you put it under high gain. I also found that no amount of post-processing on these tones could get it closer to the Fractal. In my opinion, the high end just doesn't sound correct at all. It's almost like it's shelved off pretty hard. I wouldn't say it's a bad tone though, I'd still probably give this maybe a 7 out of 10. I also think I dialed in the FM3 tone a touch bright anyway, so maybe it's not too much of a bad thing that the GP5 is cutting some of that off. I think this is going to be a really good one for the back-to-back comparison. You can really hear the differences in the back-to-back. The GP5 loses a lot of that aggression and a lot of the sizzle. It also turns the gain texture from something that's super tight to something that's maybe a little bit fuzzier. That said, an argument could be made in favour of either tone here. The GP5 definitely isn't accurate, but that doesn't mean it sounds bad. It sounds more like a rockaverb, I would say, where it's got that nice sort of chordy low-mid push thing. Something that I thought would be interesting to throw in for this video is Fractal's original high gain amps. These amps were specifically designed for Fractal Audio's hardware units. They don't have any real-life counterparts, so all of the NAM profiles that you'll find online are going to be ones taken from hardware like this. One of my favourite of these Fractal original amps is the Modern 2. I've got this one boosted and running into the mega oversized impulse response by ML Soundlab. Again, we're probably going to hear some similar high gain issues going on with the GP5 for this. Now this one actually fared quite a lot better for whatever reason. It wasn't quite as tight underneath the palm mutes, but it had plenty of that aggression and the cut that we were looking for. Before I move on to the final preset, let's of course hear these two back to back and see what those differences are. So it seems like the same sort of thing happens to all high gain tones, they just feel a little bit softer in general. While the GP5 can really struggle getting a matched tone to a pushed clean sort of thing, I do think with high gain tones it generally fares a little bit better. While they're not super accurate or anything, I do think it comes out with a pretty great tone at the end. For backups, jammings, or quick recordings, I would say that this is perfectly usable. The last clip I would say is much less reliant on the core amp tone and more reliant on the effects that are around it. This is going to be a post-rock style tone with some big ambience. Obviously this area is going to be a big strong point for the Fractal, but I just want to see how the GP5 can hold up. This is an unfair test by pretty much every measure, as the Fractal costs 20 times that of the GP5. Anyway, let's start with the Fractal again. Now since the neural amp modeler can only do the drive, the amp and the cabinet, all of the other effects you hear on this tone are going to be straight from the GP5 stock library. Let's hear this GP5 clip and then we'll talk about it. I have to say I'm super happy with how this one sounds. In fact, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised by these wet effects in the GP5 yet again. My only wish here would be to have more control over the actual tone of the wet effects. Just a couple of extra advanced parameters on each block would really go a long way to help dialing these in better. The sweet echo delay and the sweet space reverb though work really nicely on this preset. Let's close this one out by hearing these two back to back. GP5 is a little bit filtered sounding and maybe a little bit darker, but that's not necessarily a problem with this tone especially. I found that this smooths things out quite a lot and sounds more like a general ambient pad than the specifically guitar ambience we had going with the FM3. I think the overarching thing you can take from all of these is that the FM3 could be dialed in to sound like the GP5, but the GP5 can't necessarily always be dialed in to sound like the FM3. Now I'm going to wrap things up into a conclusion, and the first thing I want to mention is that there are obviously a million things that the Fractal FM3 can do that the GP5 can't, so we're really taking a look at whether or not the GP5 holds up against the Fractal. I actually do think that, especially for the price, the GP5 held up really nicely. I mean, this pedal currently costs about £60 here in the UK, which is just super cheap. That's like lower than most Boss pedals. That said, while it does way outperform its price bracket, it's far from perfect, of course. I think the biggest struggle was with the more dynamic amps like the Bassman, for instance. In the high gain tones I found that it lost a lot of the original character of the amp, but it didn't necessarily sound bad, just different. The problem with a lot of these is that once you lose the high-end information, you can't really bring it back with EQ, and when the unit tries to fill it in itself, things can get a little bit weird sounding. I definitely love the GP5 though. I don't think there is a guitarist in the world that would feel like they were shortchanged if they purchased this one. I think this is the perfect unit for getting clips when you're out in the wild, whether that's something like going to a trade show, just going out traveling, or even at a rehearsal or jam session. Also, as a backup to the FM3, you could definitely make this work. I think, personally, I would probably go for the GP50 instead, just so you've got the extra button and it's a little bit easier to navigate different presets. This video only really covered the capturing aspect of the GP5, the fact that it can load neural amp modeler captures. It does have stock models of amps and stuff like that, so you could maybe dial them in to sound better using those stock models. Amp captures is maybe more of a quick solution to the same sort of thing. If you did want to see me redoing this video but with the stock models instead, dialing them all in from scratch, let me know, because that's something that I would actually be very interested in doing. I'm going to close out this section by reiterating I love the GP5 and it is one of my absolute favourite releases of the year. That is all I've got for this video, so if you like what you heard and you would like to pick up the Valeton GP5 for yourself, please do so using my Top Man affiliate link in the description box down below. Also, while you're down there, I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel and also join my Discord server. That is all for this video, so until next time, I've been Kai.